Hi, I'm Dan Wood.
I'm Ravi, Abbott.
And we're from the RetroUnlim podcast, and you're watching RetroUnlim.
If you only knew the power of the dark side.
2, 1, 0.
Hello everybody, so we're the Retro Hour and we are presenting Mark Cale today for Play Expo, and this is System Free, you know, the massive software house and publisher that brought you kind of Last Ninja, International Karate, Putty, Constructor.
Please give a round of applause for Mark Cale.
Thank you very much.
Now Mark, this is a question we always like to start our interviews with. What was your first ever computer or gaming experience? Where did it all begin?
Atari 2600, closely followed by Space Invaders arcade machines.
Classics, I think you'll agree.
Definitely classics, yeah.
And when you played those games, did they inspire you to ever want to work in video games then? How did that kind of transition from becoming a player to wanting to work in the industry happen?
Well, I've always loved video games from the first time I picked up a joystick. I got quite good at Space Invaders and ended up being a European champion when I was a kid at 14, and always had that passion. The way things then transpired was that
Siri joining us.
Hello Siri. We didn't have Siri back then. But yeah, the way things transpired, I was always very interested in photography as well, and that was going to be my path and direction in life. Left school, became a photographer's assistant. I worked for a very famous photographer, Norman Parkinson, as second assistant. He does all the royals. I also was the assistant to John Rawlins, who's quite a famous photographer as well. But both guys gave me one bit of advice: you're in it too late. You've got to be in it early, you're in it too late. They saw my passion for video games, and they said, you know, really, you should follow this path. I'd done a lot of work for Atari by taking some photographs of their 400, 800 machine and various bits and pieces that had just been about to be launched in 1980, 81. I started criticising a lot of their VCS titles, in particular how bloody awful Asteroids was, which I thought was terrible as a conversion. And a guy there, it was Ingersoll Electronics at the time, a guy there called John Knowledge, said, well, why don't you set up your own video games company? It's a thought. Went back, mulled over, spoke to a couple of friends. One of them was doing system studies at college for computers. There's three of us. It became System 3. Spoke it over with the guys at the studio, and John Rawlings said to me, you know, you should really do this. So I went home to Mum. I was living at home then. I said, Mum, I'm giving up work. What? Yeah, I've resigned. I'm going to set up a video games company.
But that went down well, did it, with your mum?
I got kicked out. I set up System 3 in a bed and breakfast with three strangers in Park Lane in Wembley, around the corner from Wembley Stadium, with nothing. And we just built things up. Got on very well with a guy that owned the house, and we come to a mutual arrangement where, I mean, the ridiculous thing was that social services would pay you £70 a week to live somewhere, but you couldn't get a flat. But anyway, we found a way to get a flat here and base the business literally in the flat and set it up. And we had this terrible game we started off on that we worked on the Atari 400, 800 called Colony 7. We were so poor, I had to get my brother to do the artwork. I mean, it was crap. It was really embarrassing looking back now. And then we had a couple of other things that we did. And in particular, we met someone that was representing the Stampers and ultimately play the game, because we were looking for other great programmers. And ultimately, we hobbled together some programmers, and kind of the rest really was history. We started making some great games.
Well, one of those great games was Myth, and
that was later.
Yeah.
That's 1990, I think. So that's later. This is 82.
82.
So you're jumping 8 years here.
You had a lot of titles between that then.
No, I mean, the LT Software was fantastic. We met a company called LT Software that were based in near Southend, and I met them through this agent that was representing the stampers, and he said, these guys can do this game you want to do. And I said, okay. The game was a karate game, and one of my partners, Emerson Best, was a Taekwondo champion, and we always wanted to do, and it was pretty much his concept where it came from. We always wanted to do a martial arts game, and we approached, at this time, I've gone my separate ways with my two partners. They hadn't seen out the storm. They thought there was no money in it and it had moved on. But I persuaded LT Software to work with us and to do this game. We came out with a Spectrum version of International Karate. And yeah, it wasn't great, it was okay. But this Commodore 64 version was being done by Chris and John. They went on to set up Sensible Software. But before that, they'd done a Spectrum game for us called Twister. So the Spectrum version of International Karate came out in '85, late '85, and I met a couple of guys at Activision that were looking to expand their business. They just set up in the UK, and they're looking to set up a distribution label for other publishers. And I got on quite well with the guy that was running it, Jeff Heath, and we were talking at that time, and we basically were very, very lucky in that the late part of '85, during the discussions, there was a computer expo at Olympia, but we had no games finished. All these developers had let us down, including John and Chris, and there was no International Karate. So now we've got a problem. We basically spent a fortune on hiring space, and this is where I actually met that guy over there, Mr. Williams. But we hired some space, and we built effectively a stage, and we built a triangle, a hexagonal area behind it, and just showed videos of Twister and International Karate, but it wasn't ready. This was September '85. So we came up with this great idea. Let's put on a show, because there was nothing. So the stage, we put on a show. So we went into Soho, got a hold of a talent agency, and we found some karate performers that would put glass on the stage, line the glass, I don't know if anyone remembers this, bricks on their stomach, the partners would be smashing bricks with sledgehammers, all together with two metal poles to bend on their necks. And all this was a great thing. That's okay, that's great. It's not going to set the games industry alive. This is where the controversy came in. We knew that the organisers were very Christian-based, but we wanted to steal the show. And we thought we were going to be controversial. So Twister became Twister, Mother of Harlots, and we had what we best would be described as a trio of lesbotic dancers. And this man over here was at the opposite stands where I met Gary Williams, and he's gone on to become one of my very good friends. But every 2 hours when we put on the show, the floor stopped. Everyone was, they were climbing on his stand, Anko's stand that was nearby, everyone was trying to have a look at this show. It was brilliant. The organisers got very upset. At the end of the day, they said, you put on that show tomorrow, we're turning the power off. So what did we do? We contacted the press. So as they shut down the show, you've got all the National Sun, Mail, everything there, reported all, and the deal was done with Activision through the hype, and it just really saved the company, because we really were at a point where, you know, we couldn't go on without having the right distribution in place. And the deal with Activision was brilliant because it allowed us to go on. John and Chris did, the first game they ever did in the industry as Sensible Software was Twister. And LT Software could not complete the 64 version because John and Chris went on to set up Sensible Software and left. They hadn't delivered it on time, and John gave a guy that I met through someone within Activision, a guy called Archie McLean that had done Drop Zone, and we asked him, can you take this up? Here's the concept, and away we go. So our first product comes out from Activision as a distributed label. System 3 published, they funded it. It was a great deal. They took 15%, but funded everything. It was a fantastic deal. And we sent over a copy of International Karate to America, and a guy called Scott Orr, who had just sold his sports business on video games. You might remember GameStar.
Yeah.
Right, so GameStar were bought by Activision as a sports label, and they sent over this game on Commodore because one of the deals was that in America they had first rights of approval. So okay, the game goes out there and we get a fax back. Yes, it was fax in those days. And we get a fax back, typical European crap, never will work, won't work in America, this is rubbish, blah, blah, blah. We then send on the code to Epix and to EA, and within 48 hours I had the president of Epix in my office, and we'd done a deal. And this is now 86, so we're now around, I don't know, April 86. They present it at CES, and what's my bag? That's one here. And the result of Scott turning it down was quite embarrassing for the young man because we had the game rebadged as World Championship Karate in America, and it became the first ever European game to get a CES Showcase Award. Not bad.
Wow.
So that changed our fortunes. Now, a guy called Greg Fishback, that was Vice President of Activision, and quite an aggressive guy, he went on to set up a claim afterwards, a lovely man, was shocked that his guys got this wrong. And I was quite fortunate because he was very friendly with another label they just signed up, which was Electric Dreams, which was Rod Cousins. And Greg and Rod convinced me that we had to do the next game we're doing. And the next game we were going to do with Activision was quite fortunate because they did actually focus on this one and pay attention. Oh, I've got a copy there.
It's a bad full of goodies.
What that went on led to was this. And aside from World Championship Karate becoming the first Billboard #1 in America from a European company, Last Ninja went on to be the next Billboard #1 from a European company in America.
Did you find that the Americans kind of looked down the nose a bit at the European game?
Not anymore. I had everyone after me. I had EA, Activision, Epix all over me. It was fantastic. And we've done really, really well with the Last Ninja series. And of course, we're now in 1987, that's 30 years ago. System 3 was set up in 82, 35 years ago this year. But that changed our whole dynamics. And this is obviously a long time before Myth. Myth was just the latest story, But, really, it was a phenomenal time, and we had fantastic support by Activision. But we went on and we grew. In 88 we had IK Plus, and we had Last Ninja 2 and a number of other titles. But at that stage we grew very, very substantially in terms of sales. We ended up being in excess of 70% of Activision's global revenue in 1988. And the Last Ninja series went on to sell, I think, it was over 22 million copies on the 3 formats. So it was the first big mega game, and that's obviously when I got to get to know David Ward and Gary Bracey at Ocean, and then obviously things started happening at Commodore, and the fortunes of System 3 really changed.
And those games had fantastic soundtracks as well. So Rob Hubbard on International Karate and Ben Douglas on Last Ninja.
You forgot about Anthony Lees and Matt Gray and
lots more.
Richard Joseph and many other people that have done some fantastic music for
Jerome
us.
Tell as well.
Exactly, and so Anthony Lees and Ben done the first soundtracks on Last Ninja 1. But I'd say, Rob Hubbard done a fantastic job on IK, and especially on IK Plus. And then Matt Gray done a phenomenal job for Last Ninja 2.
I mean, you look at International Karate, I think, the track that Rob did for that is about 15 minutes long, which on a Commodore 64 is like incredible.
We've just done that on a game recently. I told the musician it had to be 15 minutes long.
Because it made sense though, because, you played those games, and you would hear the same bit of music before looping.
And you get bored, and you get bored, and you get really bored. So, yeah, exactly. So, we wanted to start having variety, to start off with a pace and then get more urgency and then calm down again. So it just influenced how you felt when you were playing the game. He done a fantastic job.
And IK Plus brought in those special stages, and I think that was one of the first kind of fighting games I saw where you had a special stage or a kind of trick section.
No, actually, it goes to Way of the Exploding Fist, to be honest. That came out the year before. Adam and Fred over at Melbourne House done a great job. But everybody was going into fighting games at that time. I think Gremlin had a fighting game that they were doing as well. So we can't claim it was the first game that had fighting stages, to be quite honest.
You know, around that time, obviously, the movie Karate Kid was out, and I remember everyone at school was into karate all of a sudden. Did that kind of influence any of your decisions?
Well, there's a great story to that, because Mr. Miyagi, that's based on, was the first American to win the karate championship in America. He went on to become Sega president, and he now represents us in Japan. So yeah,
that's a really cool link. So Last Ninja 2 was a really good follow-up, actually, really strong, and quite a few sequels of games haven't been so successful. What kind of made that such a good game?
I think the idea of an adventure game, but it's an action-adventure game, embraced a wider audience. And I think also the visuals and the sound encouraged people to pick up and try it, and were impressed with the way the whole thing was put together. So I think there was a lot of love for Last Ninja 2, a hell of a lot of love. We also had a lot of other promotions going on. So like I said, we're not without controversy. I mean, we put in a shuriken star and a mask in there, but we've done that on purpose so that retail would ban us, and again, you get press exposure.
I mean, you mentioned, the guys from Sensible, and they were no stranger to, kind of stirring the press a little bit to get column inches. And, people often say if you got your video game banned, that was the best publicity you could ever get for a game. So, did you kind of have a lot of these kind of ideas in mind to kind of get column inches in the press?
I think everything is always to shout a bit louder than the guy next to you that's got something similar, and you're looking for an angle in which to do that. Not necessarily to get your game banned. I mean, we've had other games that come close to the edge later on in life as well, but I won't mention those. But they were very, very successful. That wasn't really the intention. The intention was to get people to write about it, write something interesting about it, not get it banned. But if certain retailers wouldn't actually stock it, then it would obviously enhance its appeal to some people.
And it was such a visually stunning game as well, with the kind of isometric style.
Again, I mean, we were quite fortunate to have some of the best art talent in the industry at that time. What was quite incredible is, I don't think I've got it here, no, I haven't got it here. We had, at that time, pretty much, Ultimate Play the Game were doing the best Spectrum games, and we were doing the best Commodore games, because obviously our technology was led to Commodore. Their technology was led to, to Spectrum. But I mean, they also had some great stuff as well. If you think of Night Law and stuff like that, that was pretty good. That was an Ocean game. Isometric gave you the ability to build an adventure with arcade action, because it's the right perspective and it's the right way to try and express a story.
Well, we had you and David Pleasance and Gary on stage before together. I mean, what was kind of your relationship like with Commodore back then, though, at this stage? Were you working closely with them at all? Did you go visit them much, or did they have much to say about your production?
We were very, very close with Commodore, and we were up with Commodore a lot, obviously building relationships. And as David and Gary said, there's also a relationship between all companies at a number of events. So at least 2 or 3 times a year with certain events, you would get together, whether it was the Indian, whether it was CES at that time, or whether it was another show. People would get together, and it was a very, very good. It was a great time. It was a great social time.
Well, the team changed doing Last Ninja 3, and you're quoted as saying it's not the best entry in the series. How did you feel about that game?
Well, I was very disappointed with it. We had a huge problem. We had a guy called Mev Dink that came in to do the conversion of Last Ninja to Spectrum. A bit of a fiery character. still a friend of mine now, but he enticed our lead coder, John Twiddy, to break away with Hugh Riley, who's the lead artist, to set up Vivid Image. And we had someone internally, Stan Skembry, and although John was still consulting, made his code available, Stan insisted on writing and trying to beat John, which he was never going to do. So I was never ever happy with the game and where it finished up. You know, we all remained friends, move on from that, but it was okay. It wasn't, in my opinion, as good as the first two, and unfortunately, you get a lot of rivalry. You know, people just didn't want to share code then. They wanted to be the best. They wanted to try and prove themselves, and so you just wouldn't use John's code.
Did that make you want to finish the last Ninja series then, and not do any more?
No, well, John actually rejoined System 3 and still is with us, as have many of the other people. We tried on a number of occasions to do a remake. In fact, we had one almost done, and we were partnering with Electronic Arts, but Sony wouldn't approve it on the PlayStation back in the day, because at that time Sony had all power, and if there are conflicting games or what have you, they wouldn't go on there. I mean, we still have the contracts, we still all got the correspondence. That's going to be used in something that's coming up later in terms of a documentary. But it was there, ready to go, and you know, unfortunately, certain people decided to think it wouldn't be suitable for a console at that time. It had come out already on the NES. We partnered up with Jalico, and you know, it's a shame. We then tried Last Ninja again. We tried to put it into 3D, and it just doesn't work. And for me, you know, the question is, does isometric work anymore? Well, I was having a conversation with someone a little bit earlier. Would someone expect, you know, a Last Ninja now, you know, to be a full first-person 3D game like Assassin's Creed? If it's the latter, we can't do it, because I can't spend, you know, $50–80 million on a gamble. Which, you know, again, what David said earlier, everything's a gamble.
Well, another fantastic title was Putty, and I really loved the kind of absorption in it. Where did that idea or concept come from?
The concept came from a guy called Philip Thornton. He was a fantastic artist, but had very, very strange ideas of life and a lot of toilet humour. So every game he's been involved in has had a lot of toilet humour built into it. And the idea of absorbing things and sounds and references to curries and things like that, that's just entirely down to him.
It was a wonderful game, and just the platforming on it was just top, spot on.
Thank you.
Well, I look at that game now, because I know obviously we'll get onto Putty Squad in a moment, but I was playing that on the PlayStation with, you know, a controller that's got so many buttons. It feels quite natural to know which button does what, but on the Amiga, for example, you had one button, and you had to get all these functions into the game, and it's kind of a miracle that you achieved that at all. I mean, did that require a lot of planning and playtesting?
I think game controls are the key thing that makes or breaks a game today. People were a lot more patient in those days. I mean, I don't know if people remember the stepping stones on Ninja 1, you know, I mean, crikey, it just, you couldn't get away with that today. But that was John's idea of making the game harder, and I totally disagreed with it. So I'm not sure you'd be able to get away with it. I think people actually invested more time and effort to mastering a game 20, 30 years ago than what they do now. And I think that's the problem, is that now control is expected with a variety of buttons. People don't think about what they had to do back then. You look at something like California Games, which a lot of people love, but look at all the controls you've got to do on that. Yeah, it wouldn't work today with a joystick and 8 directions, and press a button and you've got another 8 directions. So you've got a joystick and 16 directions. Great. It wouldn't work today.
Well, Putty Squad had a few kind of preview levels sent out to Amiga format and a few of the other magazines, but eventually got just released on the SNES. Why was this?
There's a simple fact that Commodore had just shut down, was about to be shut down. Retail had given up, as you heard from David, pretty much on Commodore. CD32 had failed, and whilst the game was finished, we simply could not get retail across the whole of Europe to take into this. There was a console phenomenon going on, and of course it went out on the SNES. And yeah, it's just a change in technology. The game was finished, and in fact we then released the game in 2013 to celebrate 30 years of System 3. We gave it away for free over at Christmas to all Amiga fans now. I've actually had a lot of help from the community to make that happen.
Well, I remember talking about Team 17, and they said Worms DC only sold 7,000 copies at the time, so it seems like it was a wise decision. But were you kind of, you found the source code, or there was a talk of a source code?
We halved the source code. The problem was to try and get it to work on machines or things today, and so there was a group of people that approached us and offered to help, because obviously we weren't part of the Amiga community anymore. Yeah, we're now working on Xboxes and PlayStations, and our technology's kind of changed from there. But there's a lot of hardcore coders that are still out there, and there's a guy called Galahad that thankfully managed to get the code to work and allowed us to give it away to everyone for free.
Because I remember that game was debated on the Amiga forums for about 15 years.
Well, it was the Holy Grail. Everyone claimed they had the rights. Everyone was. I think the two companies started taking orders, pretending they had the rights, and it just it was wild. But now that is officially the longest game from code release to being available to the consumer. That is now the world record. Not intentional.
But I remember people saying, no, it doesn't exist. There's not a finished version of it. They were debating it for years. And then when it did eventually come out, so many people were sceptical. But were you aware of all this going on, or did you not even think people were interested in the game anymore, or the Amiga all this time later?
I mean, we were aware that this was going on, and we're trying to help a number of people by saying that it does exist, but we're not going to give it away or anything like that. And but eventually, we decided we were going to release it day one for the PS4, and it just felt like, okay, well, for all the Amiga people that really love the original, yeah, here it is, it really did exist. And we actually used Amiga code to convert it to the PS4.
Well, there's this great fashion at the moment of remaking games, and it's seeming to, look back at these old titles. It's amazing that you could actually deliver a kind of original version with the remake. It's a really unique thing.
Well, it's mainly because I think a lot of people that are in the games industry now certainly weren't in the industry 30, 35 years ago, with the exception of Ubisoft, that were a distributor originally, Activision and EA. A lot of people have moved on or been absorbed or closed down and reopened. I mean, crikey, I think Warner's has shut down and reopened its games division 2 or 3 times now. So it's quite unique. In terms of Japanese companies, obviously Sega, Nintendo, Bandai, and some of the others could quite easily do that.
Well, I've been talking about the release of Putty Squad on the Amiga all these years later. You worked with Galahad, and Galahad, he was pretty much an infamous pirate on the Amiga. Worked with Fairlight groups like that. Was that a bit of an awkward kind of working relationship for you then?
No, he saved the day. I mean, at the end of the day, if he didn't have those skill sets, we couldn't have given it away. We could not have created the master. So yeah, no, I mean, I don't view that as a negative. It was actually a positive at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's great that there's still people coding like that in the community.
Well, as we found out earlier, the Amiga has such an amazing fan base even now. 30 years later, it's such an amazing machine.
Let's talk about Constructor, because that was, a really interesting title, and that was, a quite quirky humour as well. I mean, were you a fan of games like, like Theme Hospital and that kind of thing, like building kind of games?
Theme Hospital came out after us, so we partnered with Acclaim with the original Constructor, got that to #1. We beat Dungeon Master, who's the old Dungeon Keeper from Molyneux's lot, and then he tried to respond with Theme Hospital 2 weeks later, and we kept the spot. So no, it came out afterwards. We know Gary that wrote, designed a lot of the graphics on there. He's a close friend of Phil's. But again, Phil came up with a lot of the humour in Constructor.
I love that kind of when you used to get squatters in your building and then you had to send, you know, big bully guys to kick them out. I'd kind of leave the squatters in there and just, you know, create a really awful society. It's great.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've just relaunched Constructor on PS4 and Xbox. It's about to come out on the Switch later in the year. And we've enhanced a lot of those kind of features and added a lot more into the game.
Oh, I'm definitely going to play that.
Why did you decide to remake Constructor then?
After Last Ninja, it's our second most requested game to be remade. I think RTS games, you know, have been forgotten for a long time now. It's making a resurgence now, but you know, again, it really is. It's just about what people remember in their childhood and why they would want something to come back.
It's interesting you mentioned the Switch as well, because it's kind of, it feels like a platform that's very at home for kind of retro style games, and of course you can pick up and play a lot of the games on that, whereas you play Xbox and PlayStation.
Well,
it often takes you like...
What do you want to play? Constructor?
have we got these on here.
I've got one here.
But what do you think of this platform then, the Switch? Do you find it an interesting device?
I love the Switch. At the moment it's my favourite machine. And basically, put my bloody glasses on.
I just spotted some interesting titles on here, by the way. I don't know whether I can say anything.
It's a press embargo. There was some interesting titles on there. It's got a black screen. Anyway. Anyway, we'll come back to that in a minute. Oops.
But again,
here we go. It's launched.
We've got Constructor in here as well.
Yeah, we have.
Oh wow!
It just seems pretty remarkable that, you know, Nintendo, who were famously the company that were, you know, so locked down and that in the past, are kind of the, you know, the saviour of like indie gaming on consoles really now with this kind of platform.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great, like I said, it's a great format for these sort of titles.
Yeah, they were saying sociable soccer maybe coming out on the Switch as well, and it looks like a lot of these kind of retro remakes are starting to surface.
There certainly are. I mean, the biggest problem though with Nintendo is obviously the cost of goods, because from our point of view, we're hoping they're going to build up a stronger digital store and really push these sort of games, you know, in terms of a digital, digital solution. But unfortunately, the cost of goods are a bit like the old days, and your manufacturing is extremely high. So you're restricted in what you can do. It's very difficult to get indie titles onto a cartridge and then tell a consumer they've got to pay £50 for something. I mean, that's going to be the challenge.
Have you got any plans to upgrade any other classic games?
Watch this space.
So I know you guys in the audience probably got fond memories of System 3 games. We're going to open the floor to questions now. Would anyone like to ask a question about any of your favourite System 3 games to Mark? Let's raise your hands. One at the front there, Ravi.
So Last Ninja was one of the few games for the C64 that when you looked in the back cover and you saw the screenshots that you went, oh, that's never going to be for the Commodore 64, then you booted it up, and it was amazing graphics. So I was wondering, was there ever any internal talks or internal prototypes of other games using the Last Ninja engine other than Vendetta?
We considered that internally, and it's something we wanted to do, but as I said, we had, at the time of Last Ninja 3 and Vendetta, both written by Stan Skembry, we had a different team of engineers internally, and really people didn't want to use John's engine. By the time John came back, things had moved on, and we started working on Constructor together. So, should have, could have, right? Missed opportunity, you're absolutely right. But what's the point of doing something that you know that at the end of the day, the guys are not going to deliver something that you're going to really, be proud of?
Any other questions?
Hi. There was a rumour floating around in 64 mags at the time that Last Ninja 1 was developed behind the Iron Curtain. Is there any truth to that?
The original game was going to be coded in Hungary, and we had a team of Hungarians that were working on doing that, but they failed. And we had them actually come up with the concept of the integrator in terms of taking high-res blocks, putting everything together. There was a lot of fake rumours put out by someone that claimed that we stole the code and that 80% of it was done was rubbish. My partner's Hungarian. We actually met with István Bodnar even 6 months ago, meeting with press out there, confirming that's simply not true. And there was a Hungarian film put out where, of course, the developers on there were talking about Last Ninja, and again said it was not true. In fact, they gave us our money back. So it started off as the code was going to be written in Hungary. What that team went on to do was international karate on the ST as well, because they were very, very close with the Jamils. Jamil was Hungarian, and they had early access to the ST. And the way we worked this out is that they went on to do international karate and came up with some great art on that. I don't know if anyone's seen it on the Atari ST, but it's bloody good. Completely different look. I love the cartoon graphics on it, and they've done a great thing. And I asked for something very special with that game, and that's to have a third player in, and there is a cheat mode in there where you can have 3 players on the original ST International Karate. Now, in terms of István, I mean, we were going to try and bring him here. I don't think it will come over, and obviously people will be confirming that's complete nonsense.
You mentioned international karate then on the Atari ST, and that it's kind of a forgotten port for many people, but it was very different to the Amiga version, for example.
Which version are you talking about? IK Plus?
Yeah, Plus on the ST.
Right. So IK Plus and the original ST version were obviously coming from a different coder. Archer done IK Plus. The Hungarians done a conversion of the original International Karate onto the ST, which was a new market that was opening up at the time as well.
Any other questions for Mark? Ravi?
Hi, my dad is a massive fan of The Last Ninja, and I know you
I like your dad.
And I know you said that you love the Nintendo Switch, so do you think there's a chance that you could put The Last Ninja on the Nintendo Switch?
A lot of people have been asking us this, and I think the problem with Last Ninja is, as I said earlier, do you keep it isometric? Are there enough retro fans in the world that would appreciate the game as a quality game in isometric, or do you go 3D? If you go 3D, are you going to then be able to compete against an Assassin's Creed or like-minded games? So it's up in the air at the moment. I mean, from my point of view, if there was enough interest in the game for it to be isometric and it came that way, yes, I think you can write and develop something that's very, very competitive and takes it to the next level.
Would you ever look at anything like a Kickstarter or a crowdfunder?
It's been discussed a few times, but the trouble is, even if you do that, you're talking about a 3 million budget. So whatever happens, we would have to top up the Kickstarter, because even if you get 20,000 fans paying 30 quid, you're only going to get 600,000. And by the time you look at it all, I don't want it to be what happened with Pete Molyneux, and you promise something and you don't deliver, because you can then destroy the whole legacy and the brand of the game and what it was in the past, what it meant to people.
Have a question up the front here? Need to get that gym, Ravi.
What would you say your most proudest moment is working in the gaming industry?
There are a lot of great moments. I wouldn't say there's one standout moment that you'd say that is the best moment. There's been many, many great things that have happened. There's lots of great things to talk about. So there isn't something I could just say is that's the standout moment. But I think it's always great when you have people that love some of your games in the past, and the love that things like Last Ninja has with a lot of retro gamers. That's probably the most standout thing that we've created as a team. So that's probably the thing that stands out in our mind as a milestone in our careers.
I imagine this is quite a tough question. It's kind of like asking, you know, who your favourite child is, but do you have like one System 3 game that to you is kind of that really cherished one, or the one you enjoy playing the most?
Silent Bomber.
Why that game then?
Well, it's one of our first PS1 games, and it just felt great at the time. I love shooting games, and it just had that sort of shooting adventure feel. I like adventure games, but I like it with action play, and again, it was that sort of isometric shooting game. We developed that in conjunction with Bandai in Japan. I loved that game. That was great.
Any more questions for Mark?
You created a game after Twister called Death Star Interceptor.
That was before that one.
Before that one, was it?
That was 1984.
Did you have any issues around that time with the actual film producers of a certain film or genre that was out at that time?
There wasn't the internet then, so the answer is no.
Another question over here?
Hi Mark, I had two questions, if that's all right.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thanks. I just wonder in today's gaming market, if you will, and consumer expectations about what they're going to spend their hard-earned on, how much you still value the brand of System 3 to get across what you're trying to do to consumers, given that you're not spending billions of pounds on a sort of big budget game?
We've always had the philosophy of try to do the best game we can within the restraints of what we've got, and I still strive to try and meet those standards. There are a lot of people that would just put out a bad game with a license on, but I think you would agree that until recently the best race simulator on PlayStation was Ferrari Challenge that we developed. We've done a lot of things that were different to beat people spending a lot of money. Whether we take something as a race game and we say, okay, let's try and find a way to get a famous name in, let's try and get marketing around that name. We've got Bruno Senna in to do all the handling, he's a gamer. And there's a lot of people that felt at the time, as a race simulator, it was the best thing. We went on to develop race simulators for Ferrari that went on to, some of that was then followed on into a Red Bull simulator. So Bruno went on to work for Red Bull to set up their F1 race simulator internally. So it's not always just about the big budget. You have to have passion about actually what you want to create, and a gaming experience, and what the feedback is that you're giving the player is the most important thing. Yes, we can't do an Assassin's Creed because I'm not going to gamble $50 million on something that may or may not work and spend another $50 million on marketing. We're not that sort of company, but we're still very, very successful in our own right in what we achieve, and we still have a lot of brands that people love that they still want to play. There are a lot of people that cannot compete at that level and still have a lot of success. I mean, you need to look at Rebellion, what they've done recently with Sniper. If you look at Braben with Elite, if you look at Team 17 with a lot of the stuff they've done, even with Ukulele, you don't always need $50 million to make a great game. But at the end of the day, as long as people keep their brand values in terms of what you're trying to give to the consumer as an experience, and that the game isn't a crap game, that's the most important thing. What you don't want to do is use your brands and sell a dream that is fake long term and people feel cheated out of their money. What we did do, and what we have done to compensate for that, we set up on PlayStation 2 a brand called Play It, and we've done a value range at £10, for €15. And that's something we're now continuing on PS4, so you're competing in different areas. You're trying to give people a value experience at a cheaper price.
Yeah, and I just wondered as well how do you keep your gaming mojo in place, where you want to be hands-on with what you're doing, but at the same time you've got to order coffee and you've got to pay the bills, and you've got to marketing these things and such. How do you balance that running the day-to-day business and still getting involved with the creation of games?
Well, I think it's a question of passion and desire. And if you really love games, which I do, and I play a lot of third-party games from other people, a lot of people send me their games, a lot of people ask for my feedback. I really enjoy playing games, and you don't give up on something that you love doing. And for me, it's not really a job. It's more, for me, it's something I enjoy doing. So, I still have the same desire, same feeling to want to play something as I did, 30 years ago, 35 years ago, 40 years ago. But obviously, there isn't as much time to spend on vast universes now, and there's only so many games you can play, and there's a lot more games now, so I can't profess to play every single game as I used to, because there isn't enough hours in the day. But the mojo's still always there. I mean, there's still that passion and desire to play a game and to beat someone or beat the game. That hasn't died. And I don't know, I just always really enjoyed the games and really enjoyed being hands-on and trying to direct people, whether it's my games or other people's games.
I think you make an interesting point there, because you mentioned before that players might dedicate so much time to something back in those days that they wouldn't necessarily do today, and spend that long on a certain section of a game. I imagine it's maybe an age thing, that our audience has kind of grown up and now we've got jobs and families and that kind of thing, which is why I think having re-releases of games like Putty Squad, it kind of goes back to basics in those games, that if you've got a half an hour window, you can just pick up and play to kill a bit of time.
Well, I think things like Angry Birds prove that there is pick up and play impulse games, and certainly the games like Putty Squad work better on mobile platforms where people do have half an hour to kill. And with Bejeweled, Tetris, all those very great games that have got fantastic game mechanics that draw you in, but they do draw you in for half an hour, and there is a place for that in the industry.
Any more questions for Mark? Well, Mark, I just want to say, as someone who grew up playing your games, it's been amazing to have this chat with you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Let's hear it for Mark Cale.